Welcome back, everybody. Well, legendary musician Jann Arden has been a busy person. So she's got her, of course, hit TV show, Jann, that is airing in its second season on CTV. And she joins us today to speak about her latest memoir. It is entitled, If I Knew Then, Finding Wisdom in Failure and Power in Aging. Jann Arden is back on the social.
Hi.
Jann, it's always so lovely to see you. This memoir shows us that you've been through a lot. And what's amazing about you is the way you write is always in your voice. And this book in particular, I feel like it is an empowering book. It talks about aging. What made you want to really dive into this idea of speaking about aging in a kind of way that sort of, I feel like, demystifies and also kind of celebrates what is in contrast with this kind of obsession with youth that we have right now?
Oh, it's to the detriment of millions and millions of women everywhere that, by the time women are like approaching their 40s, they're going into a state of panic because they feel like they're already starting to feel marginalized and not useful. This whole book stemmed from a very simple exchange between Ann Collins, my editor at Random House. She had read a blog that I had done on social media a few years ago, and she goes, I just read the blog. Do you want to expand on that? Like write 30,000 or 40,000 words about how great it is to get older, because that's what the gist of the blog was. And I'm like, okay, do you think anyone wants to like hear about that? She goes, well, I do. And, a lot of women are, I'll just stop doing stuff now and, just slow down. And I feel like, no, speed up. Get going, start doing stuff at 65, start a business at 71, start doing pottery at 87. Like age has nothing to do with anything.
Hey, listen, Jen, you start this memoir by talking about the idea of a crone, which has not always been a term of endearment. And yet in many ways, I feel like you are reclaiming this word. Can you tell us, for viewers who are not familiar, what is a crone?
Well, a crone, in folklore is always, the old woman that comes wandering out of the trees with, her willow stick and her bag of potions, enticing children to come and nibble on her house. But a crone is someone, female, who owns her opinions, who owns her physicality, who owns her spirituality, who is a damn the torpedoes, take no prisoners, sure of herself.
Jann, I love it so much. Like, I love this idea because we are sort of taught to kind of fear aging, and you're making it something to, to think about in an inspirational way. And that's so important. You share so many stories from your childhood, stories about your family. And one of the things that comes out is you say that time really can humanize people. So talk a little bit about, maybe that realization that you had at some point in time that, your parents, despite flaws, perhaps, that they were really just people who were suffering from their own, perhaps, pain and trauma in their life.
Oh, for sure. I'm just learning now, about my dad, things that I never considered before. I couldn't have written this book if my dad was alive because he was kind of a scary, intimidating guy. But so much of it makes sense. I think the man was an alcoholic, first and foremost, because he was self-medicating. I think he was depressed his whole life. I think he suffered from clinical depression. And that makes my heart hurt. But it makes sense. He was aloof. He spent time by himself in an unhealthy way. Like he just had no regard for us. I don't think he ever wanted kids. But I'm trying not to personalize those things anymore.
Speaking of alcohol, you share in this book your relationship with alcohol, and one that was not always a healthy relationship as well. And you also share a very touching story about a woman named Nancy, the nurse, who you say, no less, saved your life because of a pivotal interaction with her. Can you share a little bit about that?
For me, I'd been hospitalized many times in a 15-year period, always from drinking too much. I just for whatever reason, set that aside. I was lying there in my hospital bed. This was, 4.5 years ago. And a nurse named Nancy, she was a cardiac nurse. She came in. She didn't know me from a hole in the wall. And she just said, Jann, you're drinking too much and you got to start caring about yourself. Your heart doesn't like it. It's trying to tell you over and over. It's just trying to tell you to look after yourself. And I don't know why this perfect stranger, Nancy Clark, thank you, Nancy Clark, wherever you are, it just changed my life. For whatever reason, that simple, earnest sentence sunk into my head that I had to start caring about myself.
Jann, you have this incredible gift of putting words to things that people often find really difficult to talk about. What is your hope that people really get from this book?
That age is nothing. It should be at whatever point in your life that you're at, that's how you should talk about it. At this point in my life, it shouldn't be like, well, I'm at an age now where it's a dialogue. It's a way of speaking. And that has to change. Our perception of ourselves is the biggest detriment to how we go forward. You are going to walk on your intentions. You're going to walk on the idea that you have of your life. And if you think there's no power in it, you're sadly mistaken, because how you speak to yourself, what you put out before yourself is going to have so much impact on how you live your day-to-day life.
You know what you're so good at is finding the good, as you say, in even difficult or bad experiences. But at what age or when or why did that switch turn on?
I always tell, young women, and I love mentoring younger women, you're going to start becoming a person when you hit 40. And anyone I've ever talked to understands what that is, because it's a switch in the narrative in your head. You go through your 20s and 30s just trying to figure out what you like. Just trying to figure out what you want to do, because we always think we have to pick a thing. We have to find the partner, pick a thing to do, and get a place to live and move on with it. That's just what we're taught as young women. But the conversation started changing in my head. I'd lay in bed at night and I'm thinking, where is that negative voice in my head? Where is that person that is trying to foil my plans or tell me that I'm not good enough to do that? Or all of a sudden I started hearing a cheerleader. And it just started to change in my head of what I thought I was capable of.
You've always been so gracious and open about the challenges that you've faced in your life, and we've been talking about some of them today. You've talked about your mother's struggle with Alzheimer's, you've talked about your father's alcoholism, and you've talked about struggles with love and life. And yet you always seem to be able to find something humorous, and you convey that so well. Talk about the importance of finding humor even in the dark times.
I just think it's everything. I love laughing and I love having a sense of humor. My mom was super funny and she didn't know it. And even my dad, who was such a sarcastic, grumpy guy, could be super funny. My mom's Alzheimer's was completely for my benefit. I think when she came through the veil, somebody said to her, Joan, you're going to have Alzheimer's, but don't worry, you'll be fine. But this is for your daughter. This is to teach her about, what she needs to know. But my mom she's like, and I've said this to you girls before, like the things that she would say to me, well, the greatest thing about Alzheimer's is that you just forget to be afraid of things. And then she'd say, well, you don't have to remember things to be happy. And it just she was so happy all the time. She always told me she had a good life. I would enjoy sitting on a box in a field just looking around. And I'd be like, well, that sounds like a super good time.
Oh, Jann, this is why we love you so, so much. You hold nothing back ever. You just put it all out there. And there's such strength in your vulnerability. Jann, thanks for chatting with us again today. We just love you.
Of course. Love you guys. And we'll see you soon. Don't try. My mom used to say, worry is a liar. So don't worry.
That is words to live by. We want to remind everybody that your new memoir is entitled If I Knew Then. And Jann, people cannot get enough of you, which is why we're going to remind everybody that the finale of Jann on November 9th is on CTV, 8 p.m. Eastern. Everybody, we'll be right back after this.